Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Moving into a new apartment building turned into a nightmare. 6 months ago, I relocated to this downtown area after getting a job at a marketing agency. The building had modern facilities, great location, and what I thought would be quiet neighbors. I'm a private person. I go to work, come home, watch shows or read, and keep to myself. I'm friendly in the hallway or elevator, but don't go out of my way to socialize. That changed when I met the woman across the hall. She was my opposite, loud, always with friends, always planning get-togethers. I tried keeping distance, but she kept inviting me for wine nights or dinner with her group. I gave in. When I visited her apartment, I thanked her for the invitation and said I didn't usually socialize much. She told me I needed to get out more because life was too short to spend alone. I found myself pulled into her social circle. She had a magnetic personality. Soon I was part of her squad, going to brunches and clubs on weekends. Then she started dating a guy. I'll call him the boyfriend. From the first mention of him, something felt off. During coffee, she told me about how perfect he was. She talked about his job at an investment firm, his Tesla, and his looks. When I asked how they met, she said they connected at a rooftop bar when he bought drinks for her table before asking for her number. I nodded, though it seemed shallow. If she was happy, I was happy for her. Over the weeks, I saw less of her. Our brunches got cancelled. Group chats went quiet. When we did meet, she only talked about the boyfriend. At a rare lunch, she told me he was taking her to Paris next month after only 8 weeks of dating. I said things were moving fast but sounded exciting. She said, when you know, you know. Her certainty seemed forced. Things got weird. One night in the hallway, she looked exhausted. I asked if she was okay since I hadn't seen her much. She said she was busy with work and the boyfriend. When I asked if they were all right, she quickly said everything was fine, but she kept checking her phone nervously. A week later, she knocked on my door at 11 p.m. crying. I let her in and asked what happened. She told me she and the boyfriend fought because he checked her phone without asking and got angry when she wanted to see friends. She said he showed up at her workplace without warning, claiming it was a surprise, but she thought he was checking on her. I told her his behavior wasn't healthy. She agreed but defended him, saying it was because he cared, and when things were good, they were really good. She slept on my couch. In the morning, she acted like nothing happened and went home. This pattern continued for weeks, fighting with him, staying at my place, going back to him. One evening, she invited me for dinner. The boyfriend was supposed to be out of town. We were halfway through wine when her door opened. He stood there with luggage, looking at us with suspicion. He said he came home early to surprise her, but didn't expect company. She introduced me as just her neighbor, saying we were only having dinner. He said she hadn't mentioned dinner plans during their earlier talk. The room felt tense. I made an excuse and left, but heard him questioning her about me as I walked away. The next day, she texted, asking for a break from hanging out. The boyfriend thought we spent too much time together. I was worried but gave her space. 3 weeks passed without word. Then at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, my doorbell rang. She stood there with a suitcase crying. She told me the boyfriend locked her out. He said she couldn't return until she deleted all male contacts and quit her job because there were too many men working there. She stayed with me while figuring things out. She ignored his calls for 2 days. On the third day, she went to get more clothes while he was at work. An hour later, she called. He had come home early and was blocking the door, not letting her leave. I called the police. When they arrived, the boyfriend acted like nothing was wrong, but the officers saw bruises on her wrists where he grabbed her. They took him away. She got a restraining order. The next day, my car tires were slashed. Then someone poured paint on my door. Calls started coming at all hours from blocked numbers. I knew it was him but needed proof. I remembered the building had cameras. The property manager told me she needed a police report to share footage. So I filed a report, then another when my mailbox was broken into, then another when someone used my credit card to order $5,000 of electronics. The police took it seriously when they caught him on camera violating the restraining order. He was arrested again with charges that would stick. In court, he acted innocent. He said everything was a misunderstanding and he loved her and would never hurt her or her friends. The judge pointed to the evidence: violations of the restraining order, property damage, identity theft. She said these were serious offenses. He got 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, and a ban from coming within 500 feet of our building. My neighbor and I are still friends, but things changed. We're more cautious now, aware of missed red flags. She's in therapy. I added security to my apartment and take self-defense classes. I think about what might have happened if I hadn't called police that day, or if I gave up after the first harassment. But I refused to be intimidated by someone who thought he could control others without consequences. Entitled people, like the boyfriend, don't stop until they're forced to stop. They think the world owes them whatever they want, including other people. Standing up to them isn't easy, often messy and scary, but it's the only way to break free from their control. A night out with my buddies turned into one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. It started when we walked into a bar downtown. It was Friday night and the place was packed with people drinking, laughing, and having a good time. I'm a military officer and I had just returned from my deployment in Afghanistan. My buddies took me out to celebrate my return. I was excited to be back and wanted to have a few drinks with my friends. We walked up to the bar and I ordered a round of drinks for all of us. While waiting, a group of women walked up to us. They were loud, obnoxious, and clearly drunk. They started talking to us and I realized they were trouble. One of them started hitting on me, and when she saw I wasn't interested and kept moving away from her, it got ugly. She pointed at me and said, "I thought I was tough just because I was in the military." She heard my friends asking about my time in Afghanistan and knew I'm in the military. I didn't want trouble, so I tried to ignore them and turned to face the bar. But they kept insulting me and making fun of me. One of them asked if I couldn't handle criticism, calling me soldier in a mocking way. I was getting angry, but didn't want to cause a scene. I turned around and told them I didn't want trouble and we should all just enjoy our night. But they wouldn't stop. One of them tried to grab my hat off my head. That's when I had enough. I stood up and faced them with my 6'3" frame. I told them I didn't know what their problem was, but they needed to back off. I wasn't going to let them insult me or my service. They didn't like that. They shouted and insulted me more. My blood was boiling, and I wanted to teach them a lesson. But then something happened. The bartender came over and told the women they needed to leave because they were causing trouble. They tried to argue, but the bartender told them again to leave, and they did. As they walked out, they kept shouting insults at me. I was glad they were gone. My friends and I finished our drinks and left the bar. As we walked down the street, my buddies patted me on the back about how I handled those women. But I wasn't proud. I was embarrassed that I let them get to me in front of my friends. One of my buddies asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, but it was frustrating when people didn't understand what we do and what we go through. My friend nodded, and we walked in silence. I felt relieved those women were gone. But as we were about to turn the corner, my friend noticed something. He pointed to men standing by a parked car. We realized these were the boyfriends of the women from the bar because they were standing next to them. They were looking at us and talking to each other. I felt the tension rising and knew this wouldn't end well. We walked faster, hoping to avoid them. But as we got closer, the men blocked our path. One asked what was wrong with Soldier Boy, if I couldn't handle criticism from women. I was angry but tried to stay calm. I told them we didn't want trouble and were just trying to have a good time. I suggested we all go our separate ways, but the men wouldn't listen. They pushed us and called us names and spit on the ground. We knew the bartender had called the police after the women left, seeing the threats they made. So we stood there, waiting for the police, with tension in the air. Their boyfriends were getting more agitated, and they wanted to fight. Suddenly, one lunged forward and punched one of my friends. When I saw blood on his face, I snapped. I charged at the guy who threw the punch and hit him with a right hook. It made a crunch, and he stumbled back, holding his nose. We fell to the ground fighting for control. My friends were shouting and things were getting out of control. Just then, police sirens cut through the air. Several police cars pulled up and officers ran to the scene. They pulled us apart. An officer helped my friend to safety while others handcuffed the boyfriends. As they were arrested, one yelled and said we started the fight. But the police watched the security camera footage and saw we were defending ourselves. An officer asked if we were all right and said they saw the footage showing those guys looking for trouble. I said we were okay, but my buddy was hurt. The officer said my friend would get medical help and the men would face punishment. After they took the women and boyfriends away, the police took our statements and told us to press charges. My friend, who was punched, did press charges, and the boyfriend was charged with assault. The rest of the night was just flashing lights and noise as police worked the scene. The guy I punched went to the hospital with a broken nose. The whole thing showed how dangerous these situations can be. They started it all but thought they were victims. It was entitled Behavior and showed how toxic society can be. A week later, the police called me. They dropped all charges against us since the footage showed we acted in self-defense. But the boyfriend who hit my friend faced serious charges. I felt relieved. Despite everything, justice worked out. My military training helped me stay calm under pressure and protect my friends when I needed to. But I still think about those entitled women who started it all. Their disrespect almost cost us a lot. If the bartender hadn't called the police, who knows how that fight might have ended? Some people will never understand respect and decency. They act entitled and think the world owes them something. But my buddies and I know better. We've seen the real world, faced real dangers, and know that respect is earned. At least our night ended with the right people getting in trouble. I thought these stories were made up for internet points, but now I know they're real. I've been baking for years. It started in college when I needed a break from accounting classes. Simple cookies turned into cakes and pastries. I never planned to make it a business, I just liked seeing people enjoy my baking. My childhood friend messaged me on Facebook asking if I could make a cake for her daughter's birthday. We'd known each other since elementary school. I agreed. She said she would pay me for my time and ingredients. I spent hours on the cake using good ingredients and making it look perfect. The theme was unicorns and rainbows with glitter and flowers. When I brought it over, my friend told me it was incredible and the most beautiful cake she had seen. I said I hoped her daughter would love it too. The party went well. Kids loved the cake and parents asked for my contact information. After the party, my friend messaged that she couldn't pay me for the cake. She asked if she could pay next month. I was hurt. The ingredients cost over $50 plus hours of work. But I told her to consider it a gift. She called me the best and said she would make it up to me. A few weeks later, she wanted cupcakes for her niece's baptism. She promised to pay this time, so I agreed. I made vanilla cupcakes with buttercream flowers and brought them to her house. When I arrived, her sister Karen complained they were too small and not chocolate. I explained her sister asked for vanilla. Karen said she wanted chocolate, bigger cupcakes, and special decorations. My friend kept saying sorry and promised to pay eventually. I went home and made chocolate cupcakes with fondant crosses. When I brought them back, Karen took the box without much thanks. Karen started texting me directly for more cupcakes, different flavors, packaging, all for free. I got frustrated. Finally, I told my friend I couldn't make free cakes for her family anymore. It took too much time and money. She got angry and asked what kind of friend wouldn't make a cake for her daughter's birthday. I reminded her I already did that for free. I said I needed to be paid because I had bills too. She asked if I only cared about money now. We had a big fight. I left upset. Days later, Karen messaged that she was shocked how I treated her sister. She claimed her sister was going through a divorce and said a real friend would make cupcakes for her nephew's graduation. I was angry at her manipulation. My friend never mentioned the divorce. I told Karen I wouldn't make anything else for free. I'd spent hundreds of dollars on ingredients and many hours baking with no thanks for the baptism cupcakes. Karen called me selfish and threatened to tell everyone what I was like. I blocked her number. Later, my friend apologized for taking advantage of me. She said she would pay for the cake and cupcakes. We met at a coffee shop. Karen came too. My friend gave me money in an envelope. We hugged, happy to move past the argument. Walking to my car, Karen called out to me with a box of cupcakes. She said she made them for me. I was surprised but suspicious. She was never kind before. I took the box anyway. As she handed it to me, she whispered she hoped I get food poisoning and called me an ungrateful brat. I took the box, thanked her, and threw the cupcakes away when I got home. Weeks later, my friend texted that Karen got food poisoning from bad seafood. She was in the hospital for days, unable to eat and in pain. I felt amused. Karma had found her. But I don't wish bad things on people, even someone like Karen. I felt closure. I started charging fair prices for my baking and set up a business on Instagram. Now my customers appreciate my work and don't take advantage. I don't feel happy about Karen's situation, but I don't feel bad either. She wished food poisoning on me. She deserved what she got. I'm a 32-year-old female teacher who works part-time at a pet store to help pay bills. Teaching salary doesn't always cover everything, and the 20% employee discount helps with my pets. I have a cat, 2 guinea pigs, and a betta fish. Working at the pet store is usually easy. I help customers, stock shelves, and handle the register. We provide feeder animals for people with reptiles, fish, and other creatures that eat live food. We sell mice, rats, roaches, worms, and crickets. Most are easy to handle. The frozen mice and rats are pre-packaged, and the roaches and worms come in containers with set amounts. But crickets are kept in big containers with mesh tops and egg cartons for them to climb on. When someone wants crickets, we count them out by the dozen and put them in a plastic bag. Our method is simple. We tap the egg cartons over a funnel-shaped container, count the crickets as they fall in, then transfer them to a plastic bag. Crickets jump around and sometimes cling to each other, so customers usually end up with a few extra. Management is fine with this since it's better to give too many than too few. It was a busy Saturday afternoon when this woman walked in. She was probably in her mid-40s, dressed in yoga clothes. She came straight to the counter, walking past all the other customers. The woman told me she needed 4 dozen crickets. I nodded and went to the back where we keep the cricket containers. I tapped the egg cartons over the funnel and counted as the crickets fell in. I got to 48 plus a few extras, transferred them to a bag, filled it with air so they wouldn't get crushed, and tied it off. When I returned to the counter, she was looking at the bag. She asked me how she could be sure there were actually 48 crickets in the bag. I told her I had just counted them and that there were probably a few extra in there too, since we typically add more to ensure customers get what they paid for. She crossed her arms. She told me to count the crickets right there in front of her. She said she had been ripped off by pet stores before and wasn't going to let it happen again. I tried telling her that counting crickets individually in front of customers isn't something we typically do, especially since she was likely getting more than she paid for anyway. I said that counting out exactly 48 crickets one by one would take a while, and there were other customers waiting. She said she didn't care and wouldn't pay until she saw exactly what she was getting. Other customers were looking. My manager was on break and I didn't want to cause a scene. I told her I would count them. I got a small plastic critter keeper and a pair of plastic tongs. I opened her bag, deflating it and making it harder to work with, but that was the only way to access the crickets one by one. Then I started picking up each cricket with the tongs and dropping it into the critter keeper, counting out loud. I counted slowly, 1, 2, 3. I moved carefully, partly because I didn't want to crush any crickets and partly out of spite. This was ridiculous. As I counted, a line formed behind her. I could see the frustration on the other customers' faces, but nobody said anything. They just watched as this woman made me count crickets one by one while they waited. The woman told me to make sure I didn't count the same cricket twice. I nodded and continued counting. By the time I reached the 30s, she was shifting around, aware of the line building behind her and how silly this all was. I finished counting to 48 and looked into the bag. There were still several crickets left, about 10 of them, almost a whole extra dozen she would have gotten for free if she hadn't made me count. I said with fake surprise that she was right and I had miscounted. I told her I would put the extra crickets back and ring her up for just the 48 she wanted. Before she could say anything, I took the bag with the remaining crickets and walked back to the cricket containers. I took my time while she stood there with the other customers looking at her. When I came back, I transferred her 48 counted crickets into a new plastic bag. She didn't look at me as I rang her up. I told her the total was $12.96. She handed me her credit card, still not making eye contact. As she signed the receipt, her cheeks were red. After she left, I quickly helped the waiting customers, saying sorry for the delay and giving them some free sample pet treats for waiting. I guess sometimes people need to see their own behavior. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.